All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tony Bedella, and I am one of the Clovis East area teachers on special assignment. And today I'm going to be going over the flexible assessment in Illuminate and also with the new Q Gradebook integration where you can take your scores from Illuminate assessments and push them directly into your Q Gradebook. And in fact, that's where I'm going to start, just so you can kind of see the end, and then we'll work back towards the beginning of everything. So before we get started, just real quick, here is a bit.ly link to the resources that I put together for today. It is bit.ly/CUSD flex. And I'll just leave that there for a moment so you can write it down.
It's also in the chat in case anyone needs it.
Perfect. And just to scroll through here real quick, there is stuff on how to push your assessment scores into Q Gradebook. There's a video already on that. And then also everything about the flexible assessment that I'll be going over today, some additional resources in flexible. And then, oops, I forgot to add those links, but I'll get them in there. Links to how to set up online testing by either a quick code or by adding roster. And once again, it is bit.ly/CUSD flex. All right, so first things first, I just want to go through and quickly go through what it looks like to push your assessment scores into, or your assignment scores into Q Gradebook. So basically all you have to do is find your assessment, and then we'll go from there. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to click View Assessments, and I'm going to find the assessment that I want to push into Q Gradebook. While it's loading, kind of the workflow that we want to have is we always want to make sure that our assessment or our assignment that we want to push into Q Gradebook is already created in Q Gradebook. So step one is make the assignment or the assessment in Q Gradebook and make sure that it matches up to the total overall score of your assessment within the system. So I'm going to come in here. This is a 26 question test. So ahead of time, I would have already built a assignment in my Q Gradebook that had 26 points attached to it. And so I just click on it and make sure that your assessment has data in it already, or else I won't have anywhere to push or anything to push. So let me just wait for that here. So inside of Flexible Assessment, which is what we're looking at today, you're going to go over to the Administer tab up in the corner, and let me just get the Zoom bubble out of the way. So I'm going to click Administer here, and that's going to take me to this area of the administration where right here you see just a nice big old push to Q Gradebook. So I just click there. And then all I have to do is click this drop down, and it should automatically have you there. And then you just look for your gradebook that you want to push it into. So it should show all of your periods or all of the gradebooks that you've created in Q. Click the one you want to push into. Click the next drop down, find the assignment or the assessment that you wish to push into. And then all you have on this last one is overall score, so I'm just going to leave it there. And then all I would have to do is hit submit here. So really that's all there is to it. It's really, really simple. A couple things for secondary folks that are watching this. Let's say you have one assessment that all 5 of your preps took. Basically what you're going to do is you'll just come in here and rinse and repeat this. So you'll just keep coming back and pushing it to the different periods. So in this case, let's say I wanted, even in a primary, I wanted to take this assessment and push it into a different gradebook because it was language arts, maybe it was writing as well, or reading. I could come in here, click reading now, and find that same assignment if I had created it in my gradebook. Let's say it's this one, and then I could click on submit again, and it would resend those scores in there. So if you're secondary, you just keep rinsing and repeating, sending it to all the different classes that took that assessment. Or if you're secondary and you want to push it into 2 different gradebooks, you just rinse and repeat that as well. A couple other tips here. If you need to re-push scores, like let's say I give my assessment or my assignment and I have 5 kids that don't take it on the day before I push it into my gradebook, it's going to overwrite any scores that are already in there. So if you've gone in on your Q Gradebook side and adjusted anybody's scores, when you re-push this in there, it's going to overwrite those. So my advice would be to, if you only have a few kids that need their scores put in, just go into your Q Gradebook and manually do that. Or if you're pretty comfortable that you haven't changed anybody's scores, then you can just repush it again, and knowing that it's going to overwrite that. And that's basically it. So I'll go over it one more time real quick just so you can see the flow. So if I'm in my assessment, I'm just going to come over here, click Administer, click Push to Q Gradebook, grab my track, which is just my school and me, in this case, my wife, find the gradebook that I want to put it into, find the assignment, overall score is my only option, and then I just click Submit, and that's it. So that's the Q Gradebook integration. This just came out maybe 2 weeks ago, and it's really exciting because not only does Illuminate grade most of your assignments or assessments for you, now it can also go into your Q Gradebook, so no more double entry. And so this is great because it works with flexible assessments, as you can already see. And so let's get into building a flexible assessment. So let me just shift things around here real quick. Any questions so far, Anae?
No questions.
No questions. Okay. So what is a flexible assessment? So a flexible assessment allows me to take a PDF or a Word document version of something that I've created or that I've grabbed from a publisher and be able to use it in conjunction with Illuminate to either give an assignment or an assessment. So a couple of the big myths about Illuminate as we get into this is that Illuminate is only used to take our benchmark assessments, things like that. That's a huge myth. There are a ton of formative tools within Illuminate that you could be using it for. One of those is a flexible assessment. You could use it to give an assignment, or you could use it to actually give an additional assessment in your class. The other myth that I often hear with this is that it's only for ELA and mathematics. This particular type can work with any subject in our school, so it can work with science, social science, electives, PE if you want to use it in there, foreign language. I mean, you name it, it'll work with it, because really all it is if you have a PDF copy of your test and it fits within the certain parameters that this format offers, you can use it for almost anything. So I'm going to click on this demo here, just so you guys could get a quick look at what it looks like at the end. So after you do all the work, here's what your students are going to see. So if I just come in here to Administer and I come into Online Testing and I want to go into Preview Assessment. Okay, so you'll see that the document's already there, but this is what it looks like after you're finished. Continue test to look at like a student who is taking this, but all it is this right here. So I basically just took this assessment out of iReady and I imported it in, and so you can see that over here as I work through this, that this is a multiple select question, and so I have my check boxes here for multiple select, so I could just come in here and select those. So this does work with multiple select style questions. If I go down to question number 2, this is just good old multiple choice. And so notice the difference between question 1, when it's multiple select, it's automatically converted it to checkbox. And when it's regular multiple choice, it is just the radials, which is just like how the state works. Question number 3 is what we call explicit constructed response, meaning that with question number 3, I would just put in my answer here. So let's say the answer is 34 square units. I just type that in, and if that's the correct answer, it will automatically grade that for me. And so I don't have to go back in and grade those because it's a specific answer. It'll take care of it for me. If I come down to question number 4 here, question number 4 is a constructed response. Now, this is one that we do have to grade because, as you can see, they're expecting you to explain out your answer, which you can see I've already done over here on the right. And so you can type that in there. You can expand this out, and so students would be able to have a bigger area to write with. And then I can kick it back in here. So it works with constructed response as well. So we have multiple select, we have regular multiple choice, we have explicit constructed response, and we have constructed response. And those are the 4 types that will work within this. Now, this is another explicit constructed response question. And then we'll get down to question number 9 here, which is a little bit different. So question number 9 is where I had to go through and make a few adjustments to this assessment, in the fact that this was a multi-part question that had, you know, a yes and a no for these 4 different parts. So basically the way we'll do this, and I'll show you as we build this, is we break this into 4 different questions and just call it 9A, 9B, 9C, and 9D, and then match it up with this. Notice it says yes here, and I can put a Y there and an N there. I can also adjust this because it's editable to a Y and an N if that's what I decide to do. And then I just keep working through, and now we're back down to more explicit constructed response style questions. So just imagine this could be a worksheet that you're trying to put together for your students that looks very similar to this. You could really do a lot of different things if you had a multiple choice worksheet, a multiple select worksheet. I mean, it does not have to be an assessment. I mean, your mind should be already thinking, oh, hey, I've got tons of PDFs or digital copies of things that I could quickly make these into this format of test. And it doesn't have to be math. It doesn't have to be ELA. This would work with Spanish. This would work with science. This would work with social science. It doesn't matter which subject you teach. So enough with all of what you're going to get at the end. Let's talk about how we actually build one of these. So I can stop right there. Any questions, Anae?
No questions so far.
All right. So let me just get rid of that real quick. Actually, make sure here. Yeah. Okay. So how to build a flexible assessment. It's really easy. I can come in here and I can click on my create an assessment tile. Or if you have it set up, you can also click on create a flexible assessment and it'll take you right to that. But most everybody's either going to click here or they're going to come over here to the left and click assessments and then click on create an assessment. I'm just going to click right here with create an assessment off my tile. And then I've got my four choices here, and I'm going to go ahead and click flexible. Now, the great thing about this type of assessment is that it leads you kind of in the direction you want to go, and it's all in one place. You really don't have to leave this screen to do most of what you're doing. Things are just going to pop up, but then the actual assessment is always hiding underneath. So I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to name this assessment. So I'm going to call it RCM for Ready Class Mathematics. And this is grade 3. And it's unit 3. And it's a mid-unit assessment. So I just give it my title. I always try to pick a naming convention that makes sense to me, so that way I can find things very, very quickly in Illuminate. If Illuminate does have one major flaw, it's that the search engine isn't quite the best. And so naming things in a specific way that you can remember them really helps a lot. So I'm just going to hit create right here. And then we're going to work through this. Now, a couple things here that I just want to point out is that my goal is to take this worksheet or this test, and I want it to work with, oops, I need to put that back over here. There we go. Okay, so on the right, on the left here is the original worksheet. And so as I look through this one, and then on the right is the one that I've adapted to make this work a little bit better. So on the left is what the original one looked like, and I'm just going to scroll down a little bit here. You can see that question number 1 is no problem. That's just regular multiple select. Question number 2 is no problem. That's multiple choice. Question number 3, it works out just fine because it is just explicit constructed response, so I don't need to worry about that too much. Question 4 is constructed response. We're good. We're good. Question number 5, notice on question number 5, I deleted out the little bubble chart that's here on the left. We don't need that. And then I also just put in this square foot or square feet blank here, so that way I can just convert this to straight up explicit constructed response. So one of the things that I always recommend doing is going in, making sure you look at the document you're trying to import and make sure that it matches up in a way that's going to work correctly for the explicit constructed response. And so, you know, moving through this, most of these questions are not a problem at all. It's when I start to get down into question number 9 that you can see on the original document how that looks. And so then the adjustments I made on this document were just to be able to have a 9A right here, a 9B, a 9C, and a 9D. That way the students know where to put their answers in. And you can see that instead of it being A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I just change this to yes and no to make it make a little bit more sense as the kids move their eyes from left to right. So this is kind of the biggest thing, is where you have to kind of just come in here and maybe make a few adjustments to make sure things are going to match up correctly. And then this is the one that I want to import into the system. Okay, so let's get back to it. All right. So I've made my title, I've given my title, and now I want to just go through and kind of the workflow that I always tell people is start in the top box and then work your way down. And what I mean is make sure you take care of all of this before you go down and you start adding in questions, because this is important stuff here. Number one is the tags. So tags allows me to give myself some filters. Once again, I'll say it again, that the search engine in Illuminate isn't quite the easiest to work with. So if you can add some filters that just make things a little bit easier to search for, I highly recommend it. Like, since this is a math test, I'm going to tag it with mathematics, so that way I can search by it. It's a third grade test, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put third grade. And those are the two that I typically do. I really don't put a year in case I want to use it more years than one. So I just kind of leave the years off. The date administered, I never really mess with that either. But now that I've done that, all I have to do is click X. It's been saving the entire time. One thing on this is if you are working on a computer with a smaller screen and you're really zoomed in far, this X has a tendency to hide a little bit. And so you might not see it there and be like, how do I get out of this window? And so just remember that X is in the upper corner. Just zoom back out if you're not seeing it, or you could hit that back button over there. But I'm just going to hit that X, get rid of that. And now you can see that this has turned green here, meaning that I've added the tag mathematics and grade 1 there. Next, I'm going to come over here to standards. What's really good about attaching standards is if you're really starting to look at your data, you can address and add standards to your each individual question. You can add multiple standards to individual questions, and then once the kid's data is in there, it breaks all that down and really can start to give you some great reports to help you with your teaching. So I'm going to go ahead and click on standards here, and you can see that I've got 6 already in there, and I'm going to X those out. That way you can see the process of going through this. So one of the things that I recommend as you're building one of these assessments is have a copy of the teacher document with you when you go to build one of these. And so, for example, I've got it right here. And so what's really nice about this, specifically in Ready, is down here on the last page, Ready does a nice job of breaking down, hey, these are the standards that are attached to all 12 questions. So now when I come into this, I can come in and now I can be looking at this, and now I can start to add my standards in. And I'm just going to stretch this a little bit that way, and this one a little bit more. There we go. Okay, so let me zoom in a little bit. So now I'm looking for standards. Let me just get rid of all this here so we can start from the beginning. Okay. When you guys go to grab your standards, if you're math or ELA, the biggest thing I can tell you is always pick the ones that is the Common Core state standards. For everything else, if you teach history and social science, NGSS is right there. You can see it. But if you're doing history, social science, you're going to want to come in to the, let's see here, content standards, and that will be where all of the history, social science standards are located at. But we're going to do mathematics, so I just click on mathematics or Common Core State Standards, which is already selected. Then I can just come over here to subjects, and now these are my only 2. I'm going to click mathematics, and it's hitting apply. And once that turns green there, now I can choose my grade level, which is grade level 3. The introductions don't ever use those. They're just like the big foreword at the beginning of every standard off the state website. But now it's going to go through, and it's going to give me every math 3rd grade standard in the book here. So one of the biggest things to help yourself out is in Illuminate, the way their standards are listed may not be the same as like they are here in Ready, but the overarching strands are typically the same. So if I just put in MD there, you'll see that on this side here now that's going to have everything from MD in there. And now all I need to do is come in here and grab the standards that I need. So I need 7C. So I can just click that bubble, and now they're going to start to show up here on the right. And I need 7B. I need C6, or 6, excuse me. There it is. 7D. 7A. And that's it. So now I've got all my standards selected here. And just like everything else, all I have to do is click that X. And now you'll see in that box that my standards are here. And if I click that list, I can see everything that I've selected back here on this side, and I can X out of it again. And we're almost there. Now, this is the crucial piece when you're building a flexible assessment. Make sure you upload the materials. Notice that everything has turned blue or green to let me know I've done something with it. This is still white, so I want to make sure I click Upload Materials, and then it's going to open up this window. Let me zoom in just a bit here. There we go. And so I can click on this. I can click on from Google Drive, but I'm just going to click here to open up my hard drive. And now, actually, let's see. I'm going to cancel that. And I'm going to grab my recents here. There's the one I want, and I can just drag it over there. And once I have success, you'll notice down here that I've got a green dot, which means that is the one that will be used on my assessment or my assignment. You can also upload the teacher booklet in this. So if you're sharing it across grade levels and you want to, or across colleagues and you want them to be able to have the teacher edition as well, you can upload multiple materials in here. Just make sure the one that you want the kids to see has that little green dot attached to it. All right, so now that I've got this first box finished up, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start to build out my assessment. So when you're building this assessment out, as I said, it helps a lot to have that teacher's edition version of it right next to you. So I'm going to go ahead and have both of those up at once here. And so now I can have my teacher edition right below me. And let me get all the way up to the top. So I can be looking at these questions as I'm going in to put in my answers. And I'm just going to stretch this one out a little bit more here. There we go. So down here on the bottom, so if we're looking at this, let me go back to that and then I'll shrink it back up again. So I have this add button, and when I click that, it's going to say working here for a moment, and it's going to add in my first question. Now it always defaults to multiple choice, but then you can change those things as you make it work, and I'll kind of show you some different features here in just a moment. So I'm going to split this up so I can see my key at the same time. And so now, let me drag that down again here. All right, so for question number 1, I see that my 2 answers are B and C. So then all I need to do is come in here and click B and C. It is worth 2 points. So there's 2 ways you can look at this. If you want to give the students 2 points like it's asking for here, the default is all or nothing. So regular multiple choice with multiple select is going to be all or nothing. Now, which is how the state works. Now, if you wanted to give partial credit for, let's say they get B, and then they don't give me C, or you want B, and you want to give them something for at least getting something right. There's a different choice option we could do here, and I'm just going to drag this down a little bit more. I could use what we call multiple choice partial credit, or PTL here. And if you notice, there is a deduct for incorrect selections. And what this one does is, if the answer is still B and C, it is worth 2 points. Let me adjust that here real quick. And so with that, this question is now worth 2 points. And if they tell me B and D, they'll get 1 point from that, because it's going to take 1 away from the correct, or from the possible 2, instead of giving them both. So it's a +1, -1 relationship. If they give me both B and C, they'll get 2 points. But let's say they give me B and D, Well, you get the 1 point for selecting B, but you lose the point for selecting D, and the students would get 1 point from that. From here, I'm going to add my standards in at the end just to go back and do that. You can add them in at any time, but just to make this go a little bit quicker, I'll kind of keep going here. But you have choices. If you turn this slider off, now the way it works is it's only going to give you points for the ones that you get that are correct. Caveat here is if a student was to select all 5 answers, they would still get 2 points. So I really don't turn that one off if I just kind of either go partial credit or all or nothing. So now I'm getting down to question number 2. Before I go on, this is always a sticky point. So any questions on this, Ane?
I did have a quick question. If they pick 3 of them, does that put them in a negative?
Great question. The lowest you could ever get is 0.
Okay.
Yeah. So if they gave me A, B, and D, they would get 0 because now they have 2 in the negative and only 1 in the positive. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So if I look down here at question number 2 now, I see that question number 2 is just good old multiple choice. And what's good about this question is the system always defaults to 5 choices. And so it's really, really simple. Oh, no problem. I only need 4. If I click this drop down right here, and let me just scroll down here a little bit, it's going to give me some options here that are built. You can always add in your own options with that edit button down at the bottom, and I'll get to that here in a moment. But I can just click now A, B, C, and D, and it automatically shifts that to those 4 choices. And then I can just click D. It's worth 1 point, and I'm ready to move forward. Pretty straightforward on that. Let me add the next question. And as it's adding in the next one, we'll go down to question number 3. Okay, question number 3. This one is the explicit constructed response, meaning that the answer is 14 square units. You might not be able to see it just because this might be zoomed out a little bit far. Let me zoom in a little bit there. That might make it a little better. Okay, so the answer is 14. And so what I want to do is I want to make my choice now the explicit constructed response type, or ECR we call it. Okay, constructed response, EXP is the way they have it worded in here. But the important thing to remember about this one is you are now the item programmer, meaning that you have to think about, hey, how many ways would a student answer this question and you still accept it as the correct answer? Well, obviously the answer is 14. And so if I put 14 in there, that's what the key is already showing me. So I'm going to add that as a point, or add that as my first answer, and that's going to be worth 1 point. Now, let's say a student doesn't recognize the fact that it already has square units on the digital version of this, and the student goes in and adds in 14 square, move my mouse, square units. So that way, if they do that, then you can still give them, it'll automatically grade it as the full credit. Because if you don't have 14 square units as one of your possible answers and a student puts that in, technically it's right, but it would get marked wrong because all it is going through a table and checking off and comparing what answer they put in with the answers you programmed in. Another alternative might be, oh, you know what? They may put in a capital square units. Or these are third graders. What if they forget to put a space in between square and 14? Well, I might be starting to get after them for some of these things, and so I might only give them a half credit on that one. And so I can add those types of things in too. The good news is that if you miss one and you see it in there when you go in and look at it, you can always come back, add this in, save it, and then it'll go back and readjust the scores. Okay? Any questions on that, Ane?
No questions.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and go on to question number 4 now. All right, so question number 4 is the one that they have to give a constructed response type answer here. And the way the test is being graded is this one is at 4 points. So no problem. Now when I come in here and I go to add my question type, I'm going to come in and I'm going to say, okay, constructed response, not explicit. Okay, explicit only works for an exact replica of what you want them to put in. So this could go a lot of different directions. So I'm going to click construct a response. Now they're telling me 4 points. My rubric defaults to 1 point. So all I have to do once again is click this drop down, and I can add this 0 to 4 in. A good thing to note here, I believe the highest that this will go up to is 9, and that is with taking the 0 out. So the highest rubric you can go with on this is a 9. Just be aware of that. The plan is to someday have it go up even further, but right now that's as far as it goes, just because on the paper pencil version of this, 9 is the farthest it'll go as well. Now, speaking of that, you can do these assessments as paper, pencil, and online. And you'll notice now on the constructed response is that when I use this one, this little option here comes up with paper options. It doesn't affect the online version at all, but it will affect if you need to print this and give it to students and you want a place for them to go in and write out their answers. And then when you scan it in, it takes a picture of that with your document camera and will actually show you the work that they've completed on there. So it's pretty awesome. So you could even build these assignments in the way that as long as these ones will not work paper pencil. Notice there's no paper option. But if you built a test that was multiple choice, multiple select, and constructed response, you could potentially give that to your students that needed paper pencil options. You could give them that with answer documents, and then you could also assign it to your students that have online access, and all the data would feed back into the same spot. So this is kind of cool, especially for right now with what we're working with. You could have that option for students that have access and students that don't. This one that I'm building right now would not work. You'd have to go back in and change these ones to just regular constructed response. So you would have to grade those. But the paper options that you have, if you just click this drop down, you'll see size. And basically it's going to give you some options here where it's like 1 line, 4 lines, 8 lines, or a full page. And so in this case, I'd probably want to give my students 4 lines to be able to write on. You can click for it to be a blank rectangle to where you can have lines there for them, or you can have it be gridded. So what's cool is if you're doing some kind of graphing in math or science, you could actually print a grid, and on the 4-lane grid, it makes an 8x8 square, or the 8-line grid makes a little 8x8 square that students could go in and do graphing really easy. But if I click this, now in the answer document, when you print it, there'll be a rectangle with 4 lines in there that students could go in and write out their answers, which is exactly what this question is basically having you do as well. So just cool little options. Once again, it does not affect the online version. The online version will just be a blank text box. But yeah, this does open some doors to do some different things. So now that we're good with that, I'm going to hit add, and we're going to go to question number 5 now. So question number 5, once again, is explicit constructed response. So I'm just going to come in here. It's 1 point, and I'm just going to get in here. I'm going to move a little bit quicker, and I'm going to put in my answer of 48. And then I can move on. Since these are, a lot of them are the same types now, I just want to get down to the nitty gritty. So question number 6 is multiple choice. So I can just click this drop down, grab that one that is 4, and then give it the answer of C. Looking at question 7. Question 7 would be one that I would also make constructed response. And that one is worth 2 points. So I just hit add. And then I'll add in my construct response, give it the 2 points here, and we're ready to move forward. Okay, and then now we'll get to question number 8. Question number 8 is a multiple select. So I'm going to give it as all or nothing. I'm going to adjust this to 2 points, and then I can make this B and D. And now question number 9 is the one where it's got the multiple answers here, and the way it looks right here, it just isn't going to fit. Now remember, I've already adjusted this on my PDF. Now I need to make some adjustments on my actual test. And so I want to turn this into 1 question. I'm going to turn this into 4. Now the thing to note here is this is worth 2 points. So that means that this one is a half a point. This one is a half a point. They're all half points. So here's what's cool about this is I haven't talked about this button yet, but let me come back to here. This is the lightning button. And what's cool about the lightning button is it allows me to add a bunch of questions in a flash. So if I click the lightning button, now this pops up. And what's nice about this is I can add a certain amount of question types. So think about if you were just going to build an assessment and you wanted to have 20 explicit constructed response questions. Well, you could totally build that in and have all of those be that specific item type. So in this case, I know that I need 4, and all 4 of those questions are going to be multiple choice. And now I can just hit add 4, and it's going to say working, and there they are. It added 4 questions in for me. Now the next thing I can do now is I know I want to make all of these yes or no instead of A, B, C, D, E. So what I want to do now is I'm going to select these 4 bubbles over here. And now I can click edit. So once I select these bubbles on the side, notice I can also delete questions here, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit edit here. And now I can come in and I can change the answer choices that I have. So I can come in and I can add yes or no as my 2 answer choices, or a Y and an N. So I click that. And then I want each of those to be worth 0.5. And so once I hit apply, notice I can mass add standards here as well, or question groups. We'll talk about that here at the end. So once I hit apply changes, yes, I'm sure. And notice now that I've got question 9, 10, 11, and 12, and they're all 0.5. Now the only thing it didn't allow me to do was to rename these to 9A, 9B, 9C, and 9D. So I just have to come in here, click in that box, and now come in and change those out. And don't forget that after this, you've got to start off on your next question being question number 10. So I'm going to hit add. Now let me check what question number 10 is just to make sure. So question number 10 looks like it is I'm going to make this one explicit constructed response since it is just 63 square feet. So I'm going to add an explicit constructed response. And I'm going to add in 63. And of course, I would go through and add in multiple answers and things like that. This one is coming across as 2 points. If you wanted to make this one a constructed response, that's your discretion, but I'm just going to leave it as is. And I believe the last 2 are also explicit constructed response. So I'm going to mass add those real quick, just so you guys could see that process again. So basically, I click the in a flash button, and I'm going to add 2 questions. And now I'm going to say that they are explicit constructed response. And I hit add to, and it's going to work for me. Notice that it started out at 14 and 15, so it's not recognizing the fact that that is supposed to be question number 11 and question number 12. So now we're back to where we're back to 12 questions again. Question number 11, the answer was 14. So I'm going to add that in. It is worth 2 points. And like I said, I would add in multiple here if I needed to say, okay, 14 square units and so on. Oops, I can spell. There we go. Question 12, 62.
We have a question.
For sure.
Can teachers bypass adding standards if they just want to make a quick digital worksheet?
For sure. You do not have to add standards, and you can actually go back and add standards whenever you want. So if you don't want them, not everything deserves standards, that's totally fine. The standards in the question groups is always an optional process. And so, yeah, no worries there. A lot of things you just want to get them done, and so you don't need to add them in there, and that's perfectly okay. Great question. So my test is finished. Basically now, if I just wanted to say, okay, I'm done, I could just click the done button over here, up here, and let me move this out of the way. I could just click done and it would be done for me. But what I want to do real quick is I want to go in and I want to add some standards into this test just so you guys can see what that process looks like. So I'm going to come back here and I'm going to look at my handy dandy test, and I see that 7C is for that one. So I can just come in here, click standards, and there's 7C right there. I can come in, I can look at question number 2 now, and question 2 is standard 7B. So I can just go through and add these in and so on and so forth. Now there's a method to my madness here of why I want to do this, because there is a huge option that hardly anybody knows about. And how are we doing on time? I've got about 20 minutes left. I could show it really quick, but it does require some standards to be in there in order for it to work. So I'm going to add in one more standard here for question number 3. There it is. So C6. Zoom down here a little bit. There we go. And there it is. So if I only add those 3, that's perfectly fine. The data will adjust on just those 3. And now I just hit done. And that is basically it as far as creating a flexible assessment. So pretty straightforward in how you build one of these. To share with your partners, you just click share. It kind of leads you towards that. To administer, you can click right here to administer to your students online, or you can click over here to administer. It takes you to the exact same place. But that's basically how you create a flexible assessment. Just remember, if I come back to edit, this is where you can come back and make any changes that need to be made. Let's say a student put in an answer that you want to adjust. You just click edit, and then you can come in here and you can make those adjustments. Always remember to make sure you upload materials. You click that box and that material box will pop up. It's a drag and a drop. And then, all the different question types that we kind of played around with. There are some additional question types that we didn't cover. Oh, and I forgot to click these. So I believe it was no, yes, no, yes. Make sure you do that. I forgot to do that. But once we're done here, we just hit done, and that's it. Any other questions so far?
Nope.
Not right now.
Good to go.
All right. So now I want to show you guys something that is called a personalized review assignment. So one of the biggest things is, all right, I gave this assignment, I gave this assessment, the kids do really good, the kids don't do really good, what comes next? And so what's really cool about flexible assessments is you have the ability to add on assignments based on how your kids do. And so I can come in here and now I click the administer box up here on the right, or I could have clicked administer here on the bottom. And now there's a spot over here that's called access PRA. And what's really, really cool about this is where I can say, okay, based on how you did, I got a little bit extra work for you to do. So it takes you to this spot right here. And here are 3 of the standards that I assigned to my test. Now this number 1, if I would assign this to multiple questions, it's going to increase for every standard that's attached to multiple questions. The challenge activity is an activity that every student would do regardless of how they did on the test. You don't have to add one of those in if you don't want to, but I can add them in. So let's say I come over here and this says, if I hover over it, the standard is multiply side lengths to find areas of rectangles with whole numbers, blah, blah, blah. You can read it all. This one is going to give me the standard here, concrete case of an area rectangle, or if I come into this, measure areas by counting units, squares, so on and so forth. So let's say this standard right here is the one that I want students to go back and do some work on. I could assign for all 3, but let's say I start here. Basically what I want to do is I'm just going to click choose resource, and it's going to come in here, and now it's going to allow me to add in some work. So I can type in, or I can click right here. It's like, okay, where do I want to get the extra help from? So if I want to go into Khan, I can click here. It's going to launch out a search browser. And if I come in, and it's going to sometimes give me stuff like, here's the transition area from counting unit squares to multiplying. So this one would probably work. You can preview it. I always, always, always recommend to preview these before you post them for kids to go and look at them. So if I wanted to come in here, I could hit preview, and it's going to launch
This square
a
is
video.
1 square unit. So what is the area of rectangle A? The first thing
So now I could come back and be like, ooh, that's perfect. So I could just click choose resource, and now it's going to add that in. So just below this here is, will it open in a new window for the kids if you want it to? The viewing time is automatically set to how long the video is. And then activity part is pretty cool, because after they watch that video, if you want to reassess them again to see how they did, you can come in here and you can add in an activity for them to do. For example, I could come in here and I could hit add activity part, and it gives me 3 options: another resource, a multiple choice question, and I can add multiples of these, or a constructed response. So depending on the subject you're doing or what you want, you can add this in. So I can come in here and I can click multiple choice, and I can come in here and ask my question, what is the area of this shape? And what's nice here is that I can come in, and I'm just going to go over here to my little cheat sheet that I made ahead of time, and I can add this in there. So I have a picture of that shape. Now, this may or may not be appropriate to the standard I picked, but I'm just quickly trying to show you guys what this looks like. And I can grab this, and oops, and I can hit return, paste that in there. And now it takes that picture as well. You can see that it was loading real fast. Now that's in there. And then I just need to add in my answer choices. So I've made that here real quick. Let me just drag this over there. And so I can come in here, and now I can see what my answer choices were. So I've got 16 square feet. And then I can just quickly get those in there. Oops. I see a question just popped up. Can fill me in as I'm filling this out. All right. And once I'm done with that, I can just hit save and close. So let me get rid of all these windows here. Okay. And now I can hit save and close. And now you can see that when the student finishes, if they struggle, you can set some parameters to where they will get this. So now where it says assignment options, I can come in here, and now I can adjust the thresholds, which is pretty awesome. So I would rinse and repeat that process for these other 2 standards if that's what I wanted them to do. If I leave it blank, it won't give them anything. It'll just give them this. But what's cool is I can say there's a minimum of 2 of these. So let's say a student had all 3 that they did poorly on. You could say, all right, hey, you have to do at least 2 out of the 3, whatever, however many you have. But what's nice is you can also control the threshold. So I don't want to make my kids that get 100% have to do this. So let's say anybody that's lower than 70% would have to do this. So if they're below 70, they're going to get this PRA that pops up after they're done. And then the other cool thing is I can show you guys kind of the data you get back from this. So if I turn this off, the students can do the activities in any order they want. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. And then I can hit this advanced, and I can simulate data results. Now, these are not real kids. It just kind of shows you what data you get back here, which is kind of nice because that's always a good question. So you can see, which students spent how much time on that. If I click there and then I click here, you can see, how much time it took on that. I can click here. These are all the initials of students who, based on how they did. This was their confidence level because it allows them to say, I felt pretty good after I did it, whatever. Then you can see this one is, what answer and how they were doing on specific pieces. And then if I click show student results, now I see all my students and I see, hey, how they did on the first attempt, what their score was, things like that, how much time they spent on it. And it's giving me that data for all of my kids. These are just fake kids that it just allows me to simulate what that is kind of going to look like. But you get all of these reports back just for adding this in. Super easy, and actually a really, really nice piece that hardly anybody knows about. So that is the PRA. And where you access that again is under Administer, and then it's Access PRA. And where students would see this would be in their student portal after they go in there, where they see their scores. They would be able to click on that and go into those assignments. Any questions on that?
There
Nope.
are no questions. Sherry did share that if you are using YouTube, to make sure you send the URLs to her.
Oh, gotcha.
or
Okay.
Chris to make sure they're whitelisted, so
Okay.
they can whitelist them.
Okay. Very good. So if you guys didn't catch that, make sure we get those YouTube links sent to Sherry so we can get those whitelisted. But that's pretty much it. Last little bit here is online testing. Basically, once you're here, you will go into online testing. And then this is a nifty little trick that maybe some of you aren't aware of either. There's an additional way that you could have students log in to take these tests. Most of the time we do tests in Portal, but there's also this ability, especially now with as much stuff as we're doing on Google Classroom, that you could do tests with Quick Code. So I could just click right here with test with Quick Code. And then now it's going to build my roster for me. And what's really nice here is now I have this Quick Code and I can click right there and I could paste this link in my Google Classroom and it would send students through Google Classroom to where they need to take the Illuminate assessment. So I could just copy this link and then paste that in my Google Classroom. And I could just go do that here real quick. Come into my basket weaving class, make a new classwork assignment. And I could add that in here. And now when students come to take this, they would just click right there. It will automatically have the code in for them. And all they have to do is put in their username. So let's just pretend that I am a student. I would put in my username right there, click next, and they automatically get in there to take that test. So just another option for students to take one of these online. And that is the Quick Code. And I know I did that pretty fast, so I can demo it again here real quick. You basically just click test with Quick Code. And then it's going to build a roster out for you. Click that and then paste that into your Google Classroom, and that's it. This is nice for secondary. If you wanted to have different code for each of your classes, you could click this 4 or 5 times and it's going to build a specific code for each one, and then you could just assign that to the specific class periods by class code if you wanted to do something like that. All right, a lot to take in. We got about 8 minutes left, 7 minutes left. Are there any questions, Sherry? Or Anay, excuse me?
There's nothing in the chat. So if anyone wants to share out their questions.
I don't have any questions. It's pretty straightforward. And I already know how 6th grade's going to use it over at Bora. So fantastic. Thank you.
No problem. All right. I guess that's it.
Thanks a lot.
No problem.
Stay safe.
You too.
Thank you.
Yep.